Now, to be fair to Hollywood, filmmaking is a business first and foremost. And so the point of most movies, above all else, is to make money, of course. But even accepting that, sometimes films are made that have little reason, artistic or otherwise, to exist. And so you have to wonder what those in charge were thinking in the first place. And that is absolutely the case with the following 10 movies, each of which exists largely as a monument to their own pointlessness. So I am Gareth, you are watching What Culture, and here are the 10 most pointless movies ever made. Number 10, The Lion King 2019. Disney's ongoing spate of live-action remakes of their most beloved animated films have proven wildly divisive with audiences, who've been drawn in by the obvious nostalgia factor and often left unmoved by the actual end result. And is that any more apparent than with Jon Favreau's 2019 update of The Lion King? The 1994 animated original remains such a gorgeous, brilliantly crafted piece of work that remaking it seemed like a fool's errand, as it indeed ultimately proved itself to be. The big issue is that translating the extremely expressive animated characters into a more realistic live-action/CGI format was always going to result in said expressiveness being tamped down. The cartoonish charm of the central characters is clipped away almost entirely. And to make matters worse, seeing extremely photorealistic animals speak with human voices causes the whole enterprise to tumble straight into the uncanny valley. And that is not where you want to be. Sure, the point of the film from Disney's perspective is its eye-watering $1.657 billion box office haul, but it is telling that even just 5 years after release, is anyone really talking about this hollow, soulless remake at all? Especially in fond terms? No, they are not. As such, it'll certainly be interesting to see how sequel Mufasa the Lion King performs in relation to its predecessor. Will it make all the money or be a lion flop? We'll see. Number 9, Never Say Never Again. From one listless remake to another now, we have Never Say Never Again, the infamous James Bond film that wasn't developed by Eon Productions and was made as a result of a legal dispute over the rights to Ian Fleming's novel Thunderball. But of course, Thunderball had been previously adapted into an official Eon Bond film almost 20 years before Never Say Never Again. And so it seemed like this retelling existed solely to placate Kevin McClory, a co-writer of the original Thunderball story who retained the rights after suing Ian Fleming. It's tough to even appreciate Never Say Never Again as a fun what-if experiment to see how the story would have been tackled by a different Bond actor, given that Sean Connery starred in both adaptations, albeit while considerably older in this iteration. It's certainly not a bad film on its own merits, but doesn't really do anything to improve upon Thunderball. Its mere existence makes it an unmistakable oddity, a movie made solely because of creative infighting and all the ego that comes with that. What's the most pointless or annoying remake that you've ever seen, eh? Let me know in the comments below, we'll all talk about it. Number 8, Home Sweet Home Alone. The 6th entry into the Home Alone franchise, Home Sweet Home Alone, is one of the most egregiously unasked for Hollywood sequels ever. The 3 prior sequels, each more tawdry than the last, have categorically proven that audiences just aren't interested in Home Alone as a brand without Macaulay Culkin's involvement. And yet Disney made one more attempt to soft reboot the series for their Disney Plus streaming service, because of course they did. But the near universal disdain from critics and audiences alike makes it painfully clear that just about everybody is perfectly content rewatching the first 2 Home Alone movies every Christmas, rather than bothering with this cynical, low-effort slop. Hell, it doesn't even function properly as a bog-standard carbon copy of the original, with the filmmakers inexplicably presenting the thieves in a more sympathetic light, making it decidedly tougher for the audience to relish their inevitable slapstick scrapes. That's half the fun gone right there. Let's be honest though, did anyone give this movie a second thought from the moment the end credits rolled? Nope, no you did not. Number 7, The Matrix Resurrections. Though one can at least appreciate why Warner Brothers wanted to make a sequel to one of their most commercially successful franchises, the fact that they greenlit this version of a 4th Matrix film means they may as well have never bothered. The Matrix Resurrections is a baffling beast of a legacy sequel, in which the studio puzzlingly gave Lana Wachowski $200 million to make a film that feels like it was made out of spite, to intentionally thumb its nose at Warner Brothers for deciding to make a sequel at all. Unsurprisingly, this extremely meta follow-up which straight up calls Warner Brothers out for deciding to make a Matrix 4 with or without Wachowski, left even hardcore Matrix fans bemused. Couple that with incredibly underwhelming action sequences and a narrative verging on pure nonsense, and it was tough to understand how Warner Brothers was expecting this to spawn a new glut of Matrix movies. Like what? Instead, they spent a fortune letting Wachowski firebomb her own franchise and leave large swaths of the fanbase intensely disappointed, surely doing sizable damage to the Matrix brand in the process. You really want another now. Number 6, Fantastic Four 2015. 2015's Fantastic Four reboot is a pure exercise in petty cinematic futility, a film that only exists because Fox wanted to retain the rights to the comic book IP rather than let them end up in the hands of Marvel Studios. For Fox, putting out an uninspired Fantastic Four movie was just better than doing nothing. But considering that the Josh Trank-directed blockbuster was one of the most disastrous superhero films of the past decade, effectively torching the brand beyond recognition and ensuring that Fox couldn't exploit it further, it really served no point beyond keeping these characters out of the MCU for a few extra years. Lovely. Making the original duo of Fantastic Four movies look genuinely competent by comparison is one thing, but the fact that this reboot has been largely forgotten less than a decade after its release is certainly an appropriate fate for a film rushed to market for business reasons with little care for its quality. Here's hoping the new one isn't as painful, eh? Number 5, Donnie Darko Director's Cut. While most director's cuts have a very clear goal, to let the director show their true original vision of their movie to fans, the curious case of Donnie Darko demonstrates that filmmakers don't always know best. Though Donnie Darko Director's Cut was released to positive reviews in 2004, fan consensus on this cut of the film has turned considerably over the last 20 years, with many decrying its bloated runtime, revised soundtrack, and decision to over-explain the story's enticing ambiguities. Donnie Darko became a cult hit in the first place precisely because it was so mysterious and allowed viewers to bring their own theories to the fore. But Richard Kelly's director's cut takes a more concrete, literal-minded through line, in turn undermining much of the theatrical cut's charm. While some might accept the director's cut as a curio that die-hard fans should watch at least once, the problem is that once its overzealous ideas are in your head, they are tough to forget. They're in there forever. Better to stick with the wildly superior theatrical cut then and just ignore that this misguided revision ever happened. Number 4, How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Because there's too much money to be made with rehashing animated classics into live-action form, of course DreamWorks is hopping on the gravy train and doing the very same for How to Train Your Dragon. Though this upcoming remake at least looks like a faithful adaptation, while benefiting from original director Dean DeBlois being back at the helm, beyond lining DreamWorks coffers, there's no worthwhile artistic reason for redoing a movie released as recently as, 2010. The animated original still looks absolutely gorgeous and has aged spectacularly well in every respect. So even if this remake is reverent, it's tough to appreciate who it's actually for beyond shareholders desperate for more content with a capital C. Plus, Hollywood has proven time and time again that it still struggles with live-action dragon riding scenes, making it highly unlikely that this movie's live-action visuals can match its animated predecessor. I mean, look at them ride those dragons, it's so beautiful, why are we doing this? All in all, if this movie didn't exist, would anyone really be demanding it? The answer is probably a big ol' nope. Number 3, The Mummy 2017. It seemed totally inexplicable when Universal announced that a reboot of the Mummy franchise was in the works with Tom Cruise set to star. Right then. Nothing about the project seemed like a good fit for Cruise's sensibilities as a blockbuster star. And that's before we even mentioned the film's placement as the start of Universal's planned dark universe of interconnected monster movies. Remember that? Most were simply left wondering why Universal didn't greenlight another Brendan Fraser starring Mummy film. Because that's honestly what most fans of the IP wanted to see. Like, yeah, can we have another one of those? Instead, we were left with this yawn-inducing seemingly generic action-adventure flick that was clearly more interested in teeing up a franchise rather than just, making one good movie. Ultimately, The Mummy 2017 underperformed commercially, in turn killing off the Dark universe before it even got started. But its most impressive failure being a Tom Cruise tentpole that's incredibly easy to forget about entirely. Number 2, Psycho 1998. Remaking an iconic masterpiece is almost always a thankless task, but at least there's the expectation that a different voice will bring a new vision to the original material, right? Except Gus Van Sant's 1998 remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was the antithesis of this very idea, with Van Sant committed to remaking the horror classic shot for shot, resulting in a near identical piece of work. Beyond the big difference of shooting the film in color rather than black and white, the deviations are relatively minor. The remake is more graphic and makes minor plot and technical alterations, but by and large follows the blueprint of the original script and direction to the letter. So, critics and film fans alike were simply left wondering, why? One could perhaps argue that Psycho 1998 had artistic merit in pointing out that movie magic can't be so easily recreated. The synergy of a cast and crew working in perfect concert has an intangible quality that no Hollywood budget can simply replicate. But beyond this, it's plainly obvious why Van Sant's peculiar experiment has been largely forgotten to time, or while Hitchcock's original endures more than 60 years after its release. Number 1, Hellboy The Crooked Man. The recent Hellboy The Crooked Man is the cinematic equivalent of pissing in the wind, a film trying so hard to make fetch happen against overpowering evidence that doing so is a futile endeavor. Producing a new Hellboy movie without a sizable budget, Ron Perlman or Guillermo del Toro is certainly a choice. And even if you concede that fans probably need to move on from del Toro's unmade Hellboy 3, is this really the way to do it? Armed with a mere $20 million budget, Crank co-director Brian Taylor delivered this painfully low-budget reboot that, while hewing closer to the gritty essence of Mike Mignola's source material, lacks the resources to do full justice to the character. Films fall apart all the time because producers can't get the necessary budget together, but Hellboy the Crooked Man is proof of what happens when they decide to just forge ahead anyway. Because who needs quality visual effects and makeup in a superhero movie, right? This film needed it.